interesting one, sort of looking at everybody through this screen. I'm sure you're all finding it a whole big change in our world. You know, our world is just so amazing, you know, with what's happening at the moment. And I say amazing because I feel that there are so many opportunities that are coming to us through this pandemic. Do a talk is sometimes I will write something, very rarely actually do I write something, but most of the time I just trust that within my soul and within my heart that I'm able to share a message with you today. Now I'm just going to stick my timer on so that I know the time that we're doing. So today I'm actually going to read you just a little bit of a story that I wrote some time ago when I sort of sat within my own self, and going to expand on that one for you. So here we go. I want to say to you, I've been there. Confused, alone, full of self-doubt and disorientated in my life. Having experienced narcissism and physical abuse as a child, it led me to relationships of the same. Control, manipulation, lies and secrets altered the truth, causing much indecision, lack of trust, pain and anguish. And anguish was what was right and real for me. My most significant ally was my soul's voice that knew there was hope, because surely I was born into this world for a reason. And my connection to the spirit world, my guardian angel, and other light beings were what nurtured and guided me. Although I have to admit, I did not always listen, and I believe that was due to the entanglement of my childhood conditioning. There was a moment, and I remember this so succinctly in my home, when a vision just stopped me in my tracks. I realised that the vision just stopped me in my tracks. I saw a scared deer standing on a path, looking around nervously, appearing small and fragile. I realised that was me, unempowered and in flight mode. And then it came to me. All I had to do was change my energy, and I would stop being scared and confused. Then a voice broke through with the lyrics by Helen Reddy, singing, "I am woman, hear me roar." And I erupted in song and felt myself and my energy expand and transform into the lioness. No longer a deer frightened by her own shadow, now feeling courageous and strong. I had taken my power back, and it stood in all its glory. Now, that is actually a very, very true story. It's a true story. It's exactly what happened to me. And with what's been happening at the moment, so much uncertainty in reference to the pandemic, and people's lives have been turned around. I know that for myself on a personal level, my business had to close. It closed 9 weeks at the beginning. I'm a registered counsellor, so I've actually now, sort of realised that I can actually see clients in person. But my clients didn't want to do online. So there was very little work, and of course it did create an unsettling feeling. The first wave that hit me in the first time that we were in lockdown was a huge amount of sadness within the collective consciousness, and sadness within my own heart. And you know what I did? I literally went off all social media. I chose that I was important and that self-care and nurturing was really important for me. To know that when we're doing what we do, and if we choose to walk a spiritual path, a spirit path is not just skipping along, like a skipping stone along the river, along the water. It's actually diving in deep. That's what a spiritual journey is all about. And it's diving in deep, and sometimes we love what we see down in that ocean. But other times it can be a little bit difficult and turbulent. But that's part of life. It's part of experience. And it's a part of helping us to remember and to wake up. Now, I feel that when I went through that first wave, I actually went through the dark night of the soul, of my own soul. I came to realise that there was still much more healing, many more layers that I needed to deal with. Now, what I want to share is that I think all of us have been dealing with that. Many of us are. Because realistically, it's time. It's actually time. It's time to simplify our lives. It's time to actually release and let go of the old. It's time to let go of that scared deer, that frightened deer that was looking around all the time, just checking what was happening. It's time to release and let go of any anger that you may have. And I know for a lot of people that I've connected with, especially of late, especially when I started my business back, there's been a huge amount of anger coming through. It's time to actually release it. It's time to transmute it into something deserving. Some of you may know that in 2010, I had a near-death experience during surgery and after surgery. Now, that near-death experience actually changed me hugely. Within several months, I started channeling what they called the guardians of the light. Now, I'd been a spiritual teacher for a very long time, but I'd never actually, I suppose I could say, I channeled my higher self, but I never really worked with a collective of beings as what came to me through that process of my near-death experience. Now, I remember when they started to share lots of information, and some of that information was very confronting because it was about me. It was confronting because it was about our planet and our human race. And what did I want to do? I wanted to be small. I felt unworthy of the task ahead. And it's an interesting one because I think in a lot of ways there may be some of you in this room here that may actually feel that at times about yourselves, unworthy of the task, unworthy of certain things in your life. There's many layers to that. I need you to know that there's many layers to that. Many of us look at life and we feel that we've just done some healing, and then what happens is something happens and it triggers something, and we think, oh my God, I've already dealt with that. Why? Because there is layer upon layer upon layer. And each of us have learnt very, very capably of actually creating masks. Each of us have learnt very capably of putting up walls and blocks. Now, we've done this to protect ourselves. And what I want to share with you today is that, how is it serving you? I mean, really, how's it working for you? You know, I look at a number of your faces and I'm seeing nods, and I just ask if you can just, it's always an interesting one. But yeah, how is it serving you? How is it working for you? Do you know, I remembered during that first 3 months of lockdown, well, it felt 3 months, 9 weeks for me. I remember feeling isolated. I live on my own, so I felt incredibly isolated. I remember feeling almost like, how can I express it? Almost like, I was overwhelmed for sure. But for a moment, I didn't know who I was. Who was I to be in this situation? How was I to be in this situation? I had no other faces and connections to put the certain mask on that I would normally do. Can you understand that? Raise your hands if anybody can. Yeah. I was the only person that was looking back at me was me in the mirror. And that was sometimes, pretty confronting. And when I realised, when I started to come through all of this, I realised that what it did was all those masks actually hid who I am. All those masks actually made me stumble on my road, on my path. And I was scared of letting some of those masks go. I have to honestly say I was scared. Vulnerability, a lot of people talk about vulnerability, but true vulnerability is a strength. But it takes courage to step into it. So when I started to work with those layers, work with the fears, and then what was under that and what was under that, and when the tears flowed and I allowed the tears to flow, and when all of that started to come as it started to roll out and flow out, rather than feeling empty, I actually felt expansive and free. Now, I'm not going to say to you that I've got rid of all those layers. I'm going to assure you that I haven't. I am sure that they're going to come back up again, or there'll be other layers that will come in. I think it's part of being human. But what I want to say to you, though, is that this is a time in our evolution for us to actually work on ourselves, to self-care, self-nurture. It's also a time to change our energy. And how do you do that? Now, I had that experience. I am woman, hear me roar, and I saw myself turn into the lion. But how do you do that? Firstly, it's acknowledgement. Secondly, it's acceptance. And thirdly, it's a choice. I have to honestly tell you, it's a choice. We were born into this world with free will. Now, free will means that we have a choice. Now, I have to honestly tell you that through centuries of conditioning, our will has become so strong, it's so attached to our ego, that it's actually its voice has become so loud that we can't hear the voice of our soul. But when we temper it into free will, put it in its place, we know we have a choice. And that choice comes from our soul and from our heart. I'd love us to do a little task if you're willing. And that is something that I do for myself, but it's also something that I share with my clients. And I want to give you this analogy. At the moment, most of you will have your energy scattered all over the place, okay? As they say, where your focus is, so your energy goes, okay? And I want you to imagine a beautiful vase. And every time you're focused on something, you're poking a hole in that vase. Now, eventually, the water in that vase just starts to sprout out. The vessel is starting to become empty. And that's what happens to us. So how do we connect in with us? How do we actually stay within that truth of us if our energy is so scattered everywhere that we really find it very difficult to focus. We may make decisions that are rushed. We may make decisions that are not worthy of us. So I'm just going to ask you just for a moment, and it's just very, very simple, because everything's simple. I need you to understand that in life, everything's simple. Not always easy, but it's simple. And what I'd love you to do is to actually just close your eyes for a moment, and all you need to do is take a nice deep breath. And ask all of your energy to return back to you, that may be in the past or in the future. Please return home to me. And just feel your energy, just gently and lovingly returning home to you. And take a nice deep breath. Once you know it's all returned. So if you felt it valuable then, just returning home, just stick one of those up. That it actually, you've noticed it helped, it worked for you, that you feel a difference. It's lovely. Good on you. Thanks, Claudia. Janet, Sandra, it's lovely. Karen, Kathy, lovely. I don't know whether I've got everybody on my screen. I don't, because it's not big enough. But isn't it just wonderful how simple that is? To invite your energy back. Now, one of the most important things is that for us to be able to sustain ourselves, we need to have a full vessel. Does that make sense to people? Because realistically, how are you going to support others with an empty vessel? Now, one of the greatest things that I've learned is that I'm actually a person who actually, to be honest, have always been of service to others. My whole life has been that I must serve others. And unfortunately, what happened along the way was that I lost myself. For by serving others all the time at the expense of myself, that was an imbalance. Because realistically, we are put onto this earth to grow and evolve as spiritual beings in human form. The way we need to do that, thanks Rebecca, she says I can relate, that's lovely. The way we need to do that is we must, it should be non-negotiable that we actually love ourselves more. For through loving ourselves more, we have the capacity to love others. And guess what? When we love ourselves more, it becomes an authentic exchange with others. Do you understand that? It becomes an authentic exchange. Because when we come from a place of serving in a way that we become the servant, we actually find ourselves resentful, even with the greatest of intentions. Has anybody experienced that, where you've actually experienced a sense of resentment? And to be honest, that's not what we're meant to be doing. Our happiness is up to us. And we need to take responsibility for us. Thank you, Debbie. So by taking responsibility for us, we are actually supporting the collective consciousness. Are you aware that your emotional energy affects Mother Earth? Yeah, I see a few nods. Because we all talk about sustainability, and we talk about, sort of putting in the earth and, the physical things that we do. But did you know that your emotional energy connects and affects the collective consciousness of suffering, which weighs heavily on the Earth's atmosphere? Now, you as individuals, or we as individuals, have the opportunity to change the collective consciousness, to actually bring light into it, to actually make it lighter, by actually loving ourselves more and being authentic with our interactions. How did I know all that? Because the Guardians of Light have shared that information with me. And I'm looking at the time and I'm close to finishing. But I want to share with you just a poem that I wrote in my latest book, which was all channeled. And this poem is called Returning Home. And it says, "And she said goodbye as she walked away with a smile, no longer chained to her past, no longer carrying her pain. She had returned home to the soft comfort of her heart." And that's what we need to do. Let's return home. Okay, thank you.